Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harris and I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today I have a discussion for you on the reading that I have been doing in March 2024, because last year I didn't. Let's just go into it. So in March I read 7 books. One of those books was a novella, one of those books was a short story collection. But pretty happy with that. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sci-fi and 3 fantasy books. So let's just start straight from the top, and I will tell you guys how I started my month, which was finishing off. I'm just leaning over because the pile of books is about to fall over. Finishing off Morning Star by Pierce Brown. I gave this a 4 out of 5. Maybe on reflection I would go 3 out of 5. I don't know. I enjoyed this book. I thought that it had a great ending, specifically really enjoyed the ending. But I felt that certain parts of the book kind of lost me. So I didn't really enjoy the whole section when they went to the Obsidian land, the pole. So lots of stuff I really liked, and a few bits that I felt kind of detracted from the whole thing for me. So one of the big things that I have noticed, and I actually noticed this with another book this month, was that I don't really like the trope of like, I'm going to go around the kingdom and gather up all these armies. What I want to do, what I much prefer, is like, I'm going to go around the kingdom and recruit specific people for their specific skills. And then for the conflict to be more personal in nature and to be taking place on kind of like a person-to-person level rather than an army-to-army level. Morning Star is a very personal conflict at the end. But for most of the book, it feels like it's going to be an army versus army thing. And then most of the army versus army stuff actually isn't that important. So, long story short, a good book that was by no means the worst in the trilogy, as some people have said. I think Tutor Ramble Austin, who loves Red Rising, said this was quite disappointing. But for me, either a 3 or a 4 out of 5. And honestly, the ending of this was really good, and I really liked it. So for me, the ending probably pushes it towards that 4. Anyway, long story short, did very much enjoy. Now, the first fantasy book that I read this month is the same as the first fantasy book I read in most months, a Wheel of Time book. So this was The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan, the 3rd book in the Wheel of Time. I have recorded a standalone spoiler-free review. To all of these books, there are reviews. I've recorded a standalone spoiler-free review. I've recorded a full spoiler discussion with Matt, as is our want, is what we do every month. But also we had a special guest, Ross from Hardy's Books, and I think that discussion was really good. I was a bit worried about kind of like talking over each other and stuff. And I do think that we mostly avoided that. I know I can be a bit guilty of that sometimes. But this book was absolutely my favourite so far in the Wheel of Time. It was absolutely excellent. It has like a little trick up its sleeve or something that I think makes it kind of different. Which is mad, seeing as this book literally came out like 32 years ago, and there's stuff in this book that I'm not even seeing in a lot of modern fantasy. The closest I could say, there's some stuff in Stormlight Archive that kind of pulls a similar trick. But essentially, absolutely loved it. World building fantastic, characters are amazing. It made me finally love Matt Cawthon has been a real point of confusion for me, because everybody loves Matt Cawthon, but I have found his character to be pretty infuriating throughout the whole series so far, until now. And now he's probably one of my favourite characters. Probably my favourite character from the Emmons Field cast of lads. Although Rand is great too. I do actually like Rand. I know a lot of people don't like Rand, but I do like Rand. Next up was a book that I read on Kindle, which was Blood Reunion, the third book in the Hybrid Helix. Oh, I forgot to say, the Dragon Reborn was 5 out of 5. So Blood Reunion, I gave this one a 4 out of 5. This is basically, it's the third book in the Hybrid Helix series. But talking about it doesn't spoil the previous two, so unlike a lot of series. So what I'll say is Blood Reunion is basically space vampires versus Rohan, or a space vampire versus Rohan. It reveals a lot about what I feel is going to be the big overarching kind of meta-narrative for the series. And I think has some really, really good character beats with Rohan, and we get to see a bit more of Rohan's family, and kind of how, I don't know, like the kind of influences that he's had on his life. Really, really interesting book. This one was probably close to a 5 out of 5 for me, but I think I'm just waiting. I don't know. It's a difficult one. I'm really loving these Hybrid Helix books. So it's difficult. Sometimes I talk about how I don't have like that 5-star tingle with books. And I wonder if it's because this is kind of a long series and we're still at the outset of it. Yeah. Anyway, really, really enjoyed this book. And I do think more people should read the Hybrid Helix series. So this is the Hybrid Helix books are basically like superhero space opera. So if you've seen stuff like Invincible, which is obviously very sci-fi, but also contains superhero stuff. And also you're a fan of like space station set sci-fi. So things like Deep Space Nine or Babylon 5. I think Babylon 5 really works here because obviously that story is very much like one big long story, and which was also kind of written like a novel or novel series, and the Hybrid Helix series books do kind of feel like one big long story that we're getting these little views into. Yeah, so really enjoying that. I'm reading currently Partial Function, which is like a side quill, part of the universe, not part of the Hybrid Helix sort of side novel. It's like a wuxia inspired western almost, set on a kind of martial arts obsessed planet with zombie dinosaurs as the antagonists, kind of, or one of the antagonists. Really interesting story. I have had so little time to read recently, but I am hoping to finish it tonight, and then I can record. Well, you're going to be seeing this way after I finished it, but I'm hoping to finish it tonight and then record my review for next week. After that, I read The Trials of Empire by Richard Swan. This one ended up being a little bit disappointing. I really like the Empire of the Wolf series. This is the other book that made me realise the gathering of armies trope isn't something that I particularly love. I had an arc for this one, but I ended up getting to it late. But I still had it downloaded, so I could still read it. And actually, the funny thing about it is I had an arc for this one, but I listened to this one purely via Audible. It's one of the first books especially like chunky fantasy books, that I have listened to 100% Audible. I really enjoyed listening to it. I think the narrator is fantastic. I keep referencing this and then not looking up who she is, but she's great. I liked a lot of this book, but I do feel, again, the like gathering of armies trope I'm not particularly interested in. Yeah, but there's kind of like introducing like new antagonists and stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening in this book that I was like, oh, I kind of wished some of this had been in previous books, and it's a really difficult one to say. I ended up coming away from it more kind of liking it and being disappointed in it in equal measure, which is why it ended up being 3. Don't often give 3 out of 5s because most of the stuff I read I love, and also most of the stuff I read on recommendation from other people. But obviously the first 2 books in this series were genuinely fantastic. Like Justice of Kings was my number 2 book of last year, and while Tyranny of Faith wasn't as good as Justice of Kings, it was very close. Like we're talking Justice of Kings was a perfect 5 out of 5, and Tyranny of Faith was like a really good 5 out of 5 as well. But yeah, Trials of Empire ended up being a 3 out of 5. So 13 out of 15 for an entire trilogy is pretty cool. Unfortunately, 2 5 out of 5s and a 3 out of 5 probably meant the score ended up being a little lower, like out of disappointment, because I wanted it to be another 5 out of 5, and I was kind of expecting it to be. Next up after that, I read Tales of the Sun Eater, Volume 1. So this is an anthology of short fiction by Christopher Rocchio about set in his Sun Eater series. I really loved this one. I read this in like a day and a half, 2 days, and like proper loved it. I go through in my video review all of the short stories, give you a little bit of a pitch for them, and kind of talk about what I liked and didn't like about them. There really was only one short story out of all of them that I was like, this is just okay. And the others I really genuinely liked. So if you are a Sun Eater fan, don't skip this novella series because it gives a little bit of an expansion to the world, gives you a nice insight into what's going on with Hadrian in between books, because obviously a lot of the books have big time jumps. So this fills in, like, colours in the kind of scenery a little bit on that. And yeah, just really liked it. This is the first anthology of short fiction I think that I've ever read the whole anthology, not just gone in for a specific story or 1 or 2 stories. And I think it's probably, obviously because of that, the best short fiction anthology I've ever read. And I have heard from Petrick in his reviews that they just get better and better. So yeah, really excited to read more Sun Eater short fiction. And I have to say, I almost feel like I enjoyed the Sun Eater short fiction and the novellas more than I enjoy the main novels. But that might just be due to the kind of frame of mind I was in reading both novels. Speaking of novellas, the next book I read was a novella. I read this in a single burst, and actually read this while running/walking because the book was actually way longer than I anticipated. Running/walking a half marathon. I had a really good time doing that. However, the book itself ended up being a 3 out of 5 for me, and I feel like this book suffered a little bit from being a novella. I think it could have been about double the length, and then I think we could have had a bit more character development from the non-main Sun Eater cast. So like, there's a couple of characters that you basically only see in 2 scenes or 3 scenes, and I wish that we had seen more of them to make their kind of motives and the crimes and things that they do have a bit more impact. And yeah, I just wished, I don't know, I felt like maybe it just felt a little rushed at the end, which again, it's a novella, so novellas are kind of rushed in some ways. I would still recommend people read it, but I think in the end, the running part of the video was actually more enjoyable, and like the nature and the scenery, apart from when I got pelted with pretty extreme, very sharp and painful hailstones. So that sucked. Next up, I read my final book of the month, and I actually probably could have read way more books last month, but my final book was Promise of Blood, and I read like half of this before going on holiday last week, and then and I had like 200 and something pages to go, and it basically took me an entire week to read a couple of 100 pages because I was only reading because I went on holiday with my family. I was only reading when they went to bed early, but this book rules. I gave this a 5 out of 5. Any other time, this would have been the book of the month. Unfortunately, The Dragon Reborn did beat it out just as well, though. Only just. And this book was really excellent. Promise of Blood is like a flintlock fantasy. Brian McClellan, who wrote it, is a kind of Sanderson disciple, and if you like Sanderson, you will like this, especially if you're a fan of like Era 2 of Mistborn, which I feel has some similarity in terms of like it's further ahead technologically in Era 2 of Mistborn, but the like muskets and pistols and kind of like bullets and how they relate to magic was a big thing in Promise of Blood that I really enjoyed. It's difficult to say whether I did actually like Dragon Reborn more than this, but because Dragon Reborn was kind of like the culmination of 2 other books, I think it just ended up pipping it to the post. But this is an excellent book that everyone should read. Yeah, absolutely loved it. The first chapter of this book is probably the best first chapter I've read in a fantasy novel, if not ever, like, since I've been back in reading, I think. So, especially the first chapter of a debut. So, like, think back to the first chapter, and we're not talking prologue, we're talking first chapter. Think back to the first chapter of things like Eye of the World, which I thought was a good book. But the first chapter is just like Rand hanging out with his dad, walking down to Emmons Field. And then, like, I mean, the first chapter of Red Rising is good, with Daryl and the Claw Drill. I'm just looking at my bookshelf. The first chapter of The Way of Adan is good, but this one, it kind of drops you in media res into the first night of a bloody military coup in this fantasy realm, and I absolutely loved it. It proper intrigued me straight away. The 3 different magic systems of the Privileged, the Knacked, and the Marked. Especially Knacked. So Knacked, I'll explain this to you guys. I'll explain it in a review. But one thing about the Knacked, right, is that they're regular people who just have one super skill, basically. So, like, one character has a perfect memory. Another character doesn't need to sleep. So he's a Knacked. But the only skill he has is that he doesn't need to sleep. So, yeah, like, really enjoyed this one. Oh, there's one that can, like, pick any lock. So all of these skills, brilliant. Really, really loved the concept of the Knacked, and the Powder Mages were really cool and Privileged. Yeah, what a book. Really enjoyed this one. As I said before, book of the month was The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan, 3rd book in the Wheel of Time. I've taught this book to death in 3 videos on the channel now, so just want to say, if you, like me, have been putting off the Wheel of Time because you're like, oh, I'm not sure I'm up for it, based on how people talk about it, just give it a shot. Honestly, just give it a shot. Keep your expectations normal. Don't go in expecting the best thing in the world ever. And I found my expectations were really surpassed by this series so far. Let's talk about the videos on the channel. So the best performing video this month was technically my Kindle Scribe review, which was from a couple of months ago. But my best performing video that I actually posted in March was the Fantasy Starter Pack video. So that one, wait, did I post that in April? You know what, we're checking right now. We're doing this live. Fantasy Starter Pack. That was posted on the 2nd of April. So that's going to be my April #1 video, I am sure. But if we want to look back through stuff posted in, it is the Dragon Reborn review, 194 views. So yeah, I'm glad that the Wheel of Time reviews are getting some views, because I do want more Wheel of Time fans and more people who are reading along with me and Matt to come on the channel and to chat to me in the comments, because honestly, I'm loving the Wheel of Time. So yeah, the more people that want to chat about it, the better. And yeah, just a great video. Yeah, great video. I really enjoyed making it, and I love reading Wheel of Time. So literally no downside. Worst performing video was unfortunately my review of Blood Reunion by JCM Byrne. And actually, this is the worst performing video of the entire year. It's got under 40 views. I think it's only like 39 or 38. And it is a shame, because the Hybrid Helix is genuinely excellent. And I really want more people to read it. I think I need to do, in preparation for the fifth book coming out, I know I want to do an interview with Joe, and I want to do a video that is like why you should read the Hybrid Helix. Hopefully sell some more people on it. But I just, I think more people would really like it. I mean, let's talk about, like, superhero stuff is popular and people like it. Avengers Endgame is the most, the more people saw Avengers Endgame than like any movie ever at the cinema. So I don't know. I feel like sci-fi superhero stuff is really popular, and I just want more people to read Hybrid Helix because it's great and because Joe deserves a bigger audience. Let's talk about the channel. So I didn't actually look up how many views we had. Let's have a look at how many views we had in March. So views in March, we had 4,500 views, which is actually lower than I have been seeing in recent months. So February we had 7,000, January we had 6,000. So I have noticed the channel has not done as well in March. And in fact, when we come on to subscribers, right? So the subscribers, I only got 43 new subscribers in March. And I say only, like, I know a lot of people would die for 43 subscribers. But we had 43 subscribers in March, but I've already got 40 subscribers in April, and I'm recording this on the 11th. So we're a third of the way into the month, and I've already beaten last month's subscribers. I'm sure that a lot of that is that I was on Philip Chase's live stream this month. So a lot of people will have seen my channel on that live stream and been like, oh, I want to see what he's up to. So yeah, that was that's the reason why, not the reason why, that's a reason why probably that my channel has grown more in April. However, we're talking about March here. And yeah, March was a bit of a down month for the channel, but I said to you guys previously that I promised I was going to stop talking about this, so I'm going to do it right now and stop talking about it. But yeah, I love making stuff for the channel. I love doing the channel, and I really, really love, my favorite part about it is chatting to people in the comments. So if you've read any of these books, or you want to tell me what your favorite book you read in March was, or you just want to chat about anything at all, apart from, spoiling books I haven't read, then please drop down in the comments and we can have a fun chat. If you've liked this video, leave a like. And of course, if you haven't subscribed, it would be awesome if you subscribe to the channel. We've hit 500 now. So now we're just on that road to 1,000. Once I have 1,000 subs, I can obviously monetize the channel. And then I will be able to buy more books, because I'll have some money coming in that will pay for the books. So if you guys want to see me with more physical editions and with more stuff like broken binding, special editions and stuff like that, then the best way to do that is to subscribe to the channel, and I will be reviewing anything. I've got on the broken binding sci-fi, so I will be getting those books, reading them and reviewing both the stories and the broken binding edition. Yeah, if you want to support the channel, the best way to do it actually is to subscribe. I think there's a thing where I can add channel memberships or something, but I don't personally feel like I see the value in that for the audience, and that's something that I won't think about probably until much further down the line. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.